You know how life can be, right? Everything's calm, predictable, until one day out of nowhere, someone pulls the rug out from under you. For me, it was a crisp morning on the ranch. I was used to the sun rising over the hills, the quiet hum of cattle, and the sound of a long day ahead. But that morning was different. My ranch, my home, was being invaded by an HOA. They decided they wanted to build a pipeline through my land, without asking, without permission. Suddenly, my quiet existence was shattered by the cold, corporate arrogance of a group of people who didn't even know what a cow looked like. They assumed they could just walk in, dig through my property, and claim rights to the land I've worked for years. The audacity was astounding, but I had a plan. It wasn't going to be a simple please don't situation. This was going to be a battle of wills. And spoiler alert, I wasn't the one backing down. By the time I was done, they were going to regret ever thinking they could mess with me. I wasn't going to stop them in the way you might think. I had something far better in mind, a way to take control. But first, let me tell you how it all started. I didn't expect this. I thought the HOA was just another group of busybodies who lived far away, making life harder for the people who actually lived in the neighborhood. They had no interest in me or my ranch, until they did. It all began with a letter. The HOA, in their finest bureaucratic handwriting, informed me they were planning to run a pipeline across my property. It's a utility project, they said. It will benefit the community, the whole neighborhood. They'd compensate me for any inconvenience. The letter had all the charm of a used car sales pitch. I knew it wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. This wasn't some empty lot in the city. They were messing with someone who had roots here, whose ancestors built this land. This was personal. I called a meeting with the HOA president, Karen. She had a reputation for thinking she could control everyone. You'd think with that much power, she'd know how to behave. But no. Karen greeted me with a smile that could freeze water. We're just doing our part for the greater good, she said. Your property is in the way, but don't worry. We'll make sure you're compensated. It didn't take long for me to realize this wasn't just about the pipeline. This was about control. And Karen, with her smug little smile, was going to regret underestimating me. I told her I wasn't going to let them bulldoze my land. We'll see about that, she said. The steel in her voice was unmistakable. She had no idea what she was getting into. That was just the beginning. At first, it seemed like just paperwork, just some formality. But then came the threats. They sent inspectors, contractors, and surveyors to my property without warning, without asking. One morning, I woke up to find them standing by the creek, marking off sections of my land. I asked what they were doing, and the contractor just shrugged. HOA orders, he said. His tone implied they had all the power in the world. That wasn't the end of it. Suddenly fines started arriving, one after another. Fines for the slightest things. My barn was a few inches over the property line? Fine. Cattle grazing in the wrong area? Fine. They found every little detail to turn against me, twisting every rule they could. But then, things escalated. One night, I came home to find the water supply to my ranch had been cut off. No explanation, no warning, just a dead pipe. I knew exactly who was behind it. Karen and her HOA cronies were making it clear. They were serious about getting their pipeline through, and they weren't above using force. At first, I was just frustrated. But then, I started thinking, what if they thought they could take my water rights too? I had enough. This wasn't just a petty squabble anymore. It was about them thinking they could control my entire livelihood. I began to gather intel, figuring out how I could fight back. Every move they made, every action they took, only fed the fire of my determination. I wasn't going to just roll over. I was going to outsmart them, turn their own plan against them. But I needed something big, something they wouldn't expect. That's when it hit me. The key to turning the tables was something I already had: my water rights. Water rights are everything on a ranch. Without water, there's no life, no cattle, no crops. If you control the water, you control the land. And I had a plan to take control. I knew that if I could buy up the water rights that fed the pipeline project, I could shut down their entire operation. So, I started looking into how I could legally acquire those rights. It wasn't easy, but I had time, and I had patience. While the HOA pushed forward with their project, I quietly made moves behind the scenes. I worked with trusted allies who knew these kinds of legal maneuvers. We started buying the rights to the water that fed the pipeline, one piece at a time. The moment I secured the final piece, I knew the tide had turned. But I wasn't about to confront them right away. No. I needed to make sure everything was in place. I wanted them to feel like they were in control, right up until the moment I dropped the hammer. The first step? Simple. I had the water shut off, quietly. No big fanfare, just the sound of the valve turning. Suddenly, their precious pipeline project was dead in the water. Literally. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen had been all too eager to steal my land, but now she was about to learn a lesson in humility. Then came the signs. I posted them along the borders of my property. Big, bold signs reading, "Water rights, closed until further notice." They were like a beacon, a warning. And Karen? She showed up at my door, furious. "You can't do this!" she yelled, hands trembling with rage. "You're ruining everything!" I stood there, calm, composed. "I'm not ruining anything," I replied. "I'm just holding you accountable for your actions." She tried to argue, but it was too late. The water was off, and without it, the pipeline couldn't function. It was as though the life had been drained out of their entire project. Karen was powerless to stop it. Then came the moment of reckoning. The local authorities stepped in. They started investigating the illegal cuts to my water supply. The HOA had crossed a line, and suddenly, the legal ramifications were too much for them to ignore. Karen's smug smile was gone, replaced by a pale face, the realization she'd overstepped. Word spread fast. Neighbors who had supported the HOA now began to reconsider. Public opinion shifted. Soon, the HOA's influence started to crumble. My legal maneuver had cost them everything, and I had gotten back what was rightfully mine. As I walked away from the meeting with the authorities, I couldn't help but smile. They had underestimated me, but they wouldn't be making that mistake again. The best part? It felt like justice had been served. Finally. Looking back, it wasn't just about winning the fight, it was about standing up for what's yours. They tried to bulldoze my life, to control something they had no right to. But in the end, I outsmarted them. And I did it with something they never saw coming. Patience, knowledge, and strategy. So, what's the takeaway here? Don't let anyone push you around, especially when you know you're right. Stand firm, find your leverage, and when the time comes, strike back. Not with anger, but with precision. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And if you think this story was satisfying, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because you never know when life might throw another Karen your way. And trust me, you'll want to be prepared. Remember, sometimes the best way to fight back is to do it with style.